Hello and welcome back to the PHP 8 tutorial. Today on the Nerd It, we'll be going over loops. Loops are something that gets used, basically you'll use it every single day if you actually get a web developer job. Think about a loop as basically what you're doing is you're going to be able to take a set of data, and what you're going to do is you're going to go through one at a time over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It makes it a lot easier, especially when you're trying to display data, especially like, let's say if you got tables of data that you want to display information in, loops are going to be your friend, especially when you get the data from the database. You're going to end up putting them into your, to the browser window or whatever you're actually using. Like if you're using PHP in the console, it'll be basically the same thing. But today, we're going to go through each of the methods that, or the loops that we have available to us. That includes for loops, while loops, do loops, and for each loops. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Okay, so as you can see, I've got this set up to show for loops. So let's go ahead and go over some of the different types of loops and some examples of how you'd actually use them. Okay, so let's go ahead and build a basic array out. So we're going to go ahead and call this array, and we're going to put, you could put whatever you want into this for now. In some other loops, you can also do this however you want. But I'm going to go ahead and put some characters in. So we have like Mario. Let's go with Peach. And Toadstool. Actually, let's do Bowser. So in here, if we want, what we can do is we can do a for loop. Right now we're going to go over the for loop method. So when you're doing a for loop, you're going to go ahead and start off with for, and then you're going to go open, close parentheses, and put some brackets on the end so that we know you've already got it all set up. In this, what we're going to do is we're going to start with an index. So let's say if the index starts with I, short for index, and we're going to make that equal to 0. We're going to follow that up with a semicolon, so that's the start of that, and then we're going to go I, and this is the condition that the loop's going to follow. We're going to say where I is less than count array, because what we want to do is we want to go through each value in the array. So we're going to go ahead and do a count of each of the values. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and increase that index, which is going to be I++. Basically what the plus is doing is it's going to add it afterward. So now we're going to go ahead and go into the code part where we're actually going to display the information. And all we're going to do is go ahead and do var dump. And then we're going to go ahead and take what's in the array, and we're going to use the I as the index of that array. So we can go array, and you remember with the last one we did arrays, we can go ahead and set I as the index. And what that's going to do, and let's go ahead and make sure we put a semicolon on the end here. If we save this, and then we go back to the browser, and we refresh this, you'll see that it's going to loop through and go Mario, Peach, Bowser. Or, sorry, Bowser. So now if we go back to the code, let's say if we go ahead and add more to this array. You're going to notice link Metroid. So like say if we go ahead and add to this array and we save and go back to the browser, you'll see that it displays all the items in the loop. So you'll see why that's actually really helpful to do. So now let's go back to the code. We'll go ahead and move on to while loops. So the difference is in the while loop, what you're going to do is this is just, it's very similar, but the difference is you actually have to set up the counter on the outside if we want to do something that we did similar to the above. So that way it knows the condition. So we can go, let's go with let's go with is less than equal to count array. This will be very similar to like we were doing before. But the thing is that we are going to increment this inside the loop. So what we're going to do is we'll go in here and we're going to go ahead and let's just go ahead and copy this line right here. And then below this, we're just going to do I++. Basically, it's the same thing as doing this, except we're going to do it inside the loop, and we're going to increase this value till this condition is met. So let's go ahead. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and take that equal off. So now that this is done, this condition is going to be run first. It's going to check to see if this value is less than the count of the array. So obviously we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to look and go, okay, how many are in the array? And it's going to count that, and it's going to tell this where it needs to be. So if we go ahead and save this and we run it, and we wait, hold up here. We might want to go ahead and let's go back and comment out that initial loop here, so that way we don't have extra stuff on the screen. Go back to the browser and refresh. As you'll see, it says Mario, Peach, Bowser, I don't know what my problem is, Link, and Metroid. Okay. And if we go back, now you got to be careful though, because if you were to have made this less than equal to count, you got to be careful though, is that if you make this less than equal to count, what's going to happen is it's going to increase over what the array can handle, because obviously it's going to go up to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But if you notice that there isn't a fifth value in here, so that's why you'd want to make sure your condition is less than the count, because this is just going to give you the value. But you got to remember that the index on an array is always going to start at 0. Hence the reason why when you loop through this the first time, it's going, okay, I is equal to 0. So it's getting the 0 index inside the array. So let's say if we do this as this, what's going to happen is if we go back to the browser and refresh, you're going to get an undefined array key 5. And it's going to tell you on line 15 that there's an issue. So if we go back into our code, and this is something you'll learn with debugging, is that you can go back to the file, you'll know that it's on line 15. And if you look here, the I is going to equal to 5, and it's not going to find a value. So we just make sure that this isn't going to happen. We can go ahead and get rid of the less than equal, because obviously we want it to be less than. All right, so now we're going to go with, let's go ahead and comment this out first, so that way we don't have any issues. Let's go down to the do loop. Okay, so this one is very similar. So let's go ahead and, let's just go ahead and copy this line, and you'll see, and then re-comment this back out. Now, if we take the condition here and we put it onto the end, and then replace this with do, not D0, and save this, basically this is a do while. This is going do this, and then while is going to be checked afterwards to say, okay, the count, let's just keep on going. But you'll notice when we go back to the browser that it's the same. And you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, what's the point? Okay, so what the point is, it's going to first go over the data and then check the condition. What happens is, this is always going to run. So let's go ahead and act like we're going to just display the I in this loop. So we're just going to display the index, or else we're going to break this on this with this example. All right, so let's go ahead and save this and go back to the browser. You'll see it says 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the thing is, if you change this to 6 and you save it, what do you think is going to happen? Sorry, let's go back to code. Let's say you change this I to a 6. What do you think is going to happen? What's going to happen is this is going to run first before this is ever checked. So we know that we want this I to be less than the count. So what's going to happen is if we save this and we go back to the browser and refresh, you'll see that it's going to see 6. Why? Because inside the loop, what's happening is this expression's running the first time no matter what, which can cause problems because, like, obviously if we put back in the array and we put 6 here, 6 is not going to exist. So it's going to error out. So that's something you got to be careful with, especially with do while loops. Now for the while loops, they are really, really good when you're trying to parse a file, because what's going to happen is it's going to keep on parsing it while there is additional lines in that file. On a for each loop, so let's go ahead and give you the example first. So for each, you basically are going to put the first value as the array. Okay, so the array, obviously, that we have set up here, which is Mario, Peach, Bowser, Link, and Metroid. I didn't mess it up that time. And we're going to say array for each item in the array. And we're going to set that as the value. Now this right here can be whatever you want. So you can call it character or a C or whatever you want, without the exclamation mark, because that wouldn't work. But let's go with car. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the open and close curly brace, and inside of here, if we just type in var dump and we go with value, and you'll see this is the reason why you'll see that using for loop is probably going to be your most used loop that you'll ever use. If we go ahead and do this, and as you can see, we don't have an index or anything that's being counted here. So it's just going through each of the values in the array and dumping them out. So now if we save this and we go back to the browser and refresh, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Oh, my bad. It is car, because I forgot we didn't use value. If we use value, that wouldn't have broke. So if we go back here and refresh, you'll see that it says Mario, Peach, Bowser, Link, and Metroid. Because obviously, remember, we're using var dumps. That's the reason why you see this extra information on the side. It's just easier to display the information without having to create breaks or PHP end of lines and stuff like that. All right, so now that you can see this, you can see how great having a for each loop is. It's amazing. So now let's go with, let's say if we have, let's say if we want a key, and let's go ahead and build a new array here. And let's say this array is equal to, let's go with, well, actually, let's go ahead and set up with what we're going to do next. Or say Google, and we have a key value pair, and the value of this key is https google.com. So what's cool is we can use a thing called the key value pair. So this is going to be the key. Remember, this is just the variable. You can call it whatever you want. So this would be the key, which is this. And then this right here is the value. So let's go ahead and just rename this value because I'm not going to really set it. Okay, so somehow I deleted something that wasn't supposed to be deleted. Oh, I see what happened. Sorry. I forgot a semicolon on the end. You will find yourself doing that more often than not, believe it or not. Okay, so we're going key, value, car. We save that, the line goes away. So you're gonna go ahead and save this, and if we go back to the browser, you'll see that it says https google.com. But if you switch this in the code to be key, and you save this, and we go back to the browser, you'll see that the key is Google. So you can see why this is actually really useful. In the example, we're going to go ahead and go over an example of why this is actually pretty cool. Let's go ahead in this array. Let's go ahead and add additional links. You can add whatever you want. But let's go ahead and add some links here. So let's say you have Google, you have YouTube. Set this to https://youtube.com. Or then you have also, let's go with let's go with Nintendo, and then https. Actually, let's go with PHP, so that way you have a link to PHP. php.net. Go over here, type PHP. I am terribly sorry. Go back to the code, and let's go ahead and create an array that looks like this. I apologize. And let's go ahead and add php.net. All right, so let's, below this, as you can see, you got the same exact stuff. So you got the for each loop, and we go back to the browser and refresh, you'll see Google, YouTube, php.net. So now let's go back to the code, and this is why it's actually very useful to use for each loops. So I'm going to give you an example of this. So let's go below this pre-tag and go ahead and add let's go ahead and add a UL for an unordered list. All right. And inside this, let's go ahead and add an LI. And then inside this, let's go ahead and add an anchor tag. So href. And I'm sure, hopefully, if you know, hopefully you know some HTML before coming into this. All right, so we just made the basic building blocks of a unordered list with information, but we want to go ahead and display the above information in that unordered list. So what we're going to do is right before the unordered list, or right after, sorry, we're going to do a open PHP tag and close it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a for each down here, and we're going to go, let's go ahead and do the array as key value. We're just going to stick with key value. Remember, this could be whatever you want to name it. And then inside of here, you need to make sure that you put a open curly brace. But what we're going to do is after the closing line tag, we're going to go ahead and add another open PHP, and we're going to close that curly brace. Now, PHP doesn't care as long as you've got it open and close to it, and you have another PHP tag that's actually going to close it. Now, what's also neat is in PHP, you can go ahead and use this. It's a shorthand for echo, which is basically going to take, if you take the value here and we save it, and go back to the browser and refresh, you're going to see that we have links to all, Google, YouTube. Now, they're not going to work because you didn't put them in the href tag. Or sorry, the href attribute. Okay, so let's go back in here. We want to go ahead and cut this and paste this into the href tag. Afterwards, though, because the name of the actual link, or what we're going to actually display on the screen, is the key, we're going to go in here and do the same thing we did with the value. We can do an open and close with an equal, and we can take key and save this and go back to the browser, and you'll see that you actually have active working links. So let's say if we click on php.net, you'll see that right here, it brings you to PHP. Now, mind you, this might actually take you out because we didn't actually set it up to actually open a new browser, but if you click on your scroll wheel on it, it should open a new tab. All right, so let's go back over to the code, and let's go ahead and design this up a little bit, so that way you can kind of see why this is actually pretty helpful. So like, imagine, let's go ahead and give this a list style of none, so that way we don't have the little the bullets, and then we go ahead and display flex. If you don't know what flex is, I'd really, I could definitely tell you need to look this up. But for now, just go ahead and follow me. All right, so we set up a style. We're saying that, hey, don't go ahead and show the little bullet points. Display flex and add a gap of 30. Flex automatically sets it as a from left to right. So that's the reason why we actually use display flex. And then inside here, we're going to go ahead and add a style to the anchor tag. And we're going to go style, text decoration. 9 times out of 10, you probably wouldn't want to do inline styling. I'm just doing inline styling to kind of give you an example of how this would look. So now let's go ahead and save this and let's go back to the browser and we refresh this. You'll see you have something that looks like a navigation. So a lot of navigations are going to be built like this with for each loops, especially with navigations that you're building out dynamically that you've got set up in a database. And then you want to display them in a certain order and you want to actually make them look nice. So that way in the code, you'll see that I only wrote this once. So looping over it, I am reusing this same exact line here over and over and over again. So that way I'm not doing a lot of unnecessary code. And this is why using PHP is great. Or I mean, you can do this in Ruby or whatever you want to use. You can use JavaScript or React Native or whichever you choose to use. They'll all have something similar that's going to allow you to go through each and everything in the array and display it like this right here. So with that being said, that is basically everything you need with the use of loops. Again, loops are very important to learn, so get used to using them. You'll memorize every one of these loops outside of do while maybe. But these are used more often than not. So with that being said, I'm going to leave this video just a little bit shorter than most of them. It's still a 20-minute video. If you have any questions or concerns or just have a comment, go ahead and leave a comment below. Also, please subscribe because I've got more videos coming out. And once this basic series is finished, I'd like to go into a little bit more advanced stuff like the use of classes and stuff like that and why you would use those and how you would link them together. So have a good one.